York, right? My cities run together, my time runs together. I don't even know. All I know is it's a beautiful day the Creator has brought, and I'm very happy to see such beautiful faces. Assalamu alaikum, and also hello. I was getting fascinated by the brother who had on the kippah, the Moorish scientist. My father was a Moorish scientist. My father's from Jamaica, and I spent a lot of my early life in Jamaica seeing things that people said couldn't happen because my mother was a conjure woman, if you know what that means. So I was exposed at the very early days to the mystic side. One of the things that I understood outside of the Masonic leagues, and if there are Masons here, please don't get offended, I have taught Masons, okay? The Moorish temple scientists probably come closer to truth than anyone that I know. The truth has been so scattered throughout the quote-unquote diaspora till to get segments and get returned to what seems truth now sounds like a fairy tale. I definitely want to talk with that brother again, and I almost wanted to say, hey, don't call me up yet. I want to hear some more. I don't do that often. So as far as I'm concerned, in my limited fashion, the brother had a lot of truths, and I find again that the populace of New York has been very blessed. It's just that many of them have not taken advantage of their blessings. You have a lot of brain power here. As I always start to do when getting into my presentations, I don't like to call them lectures. Lectures can be boring. I hope none of my presentations are ever boring. If they are, then I need to stop coming here. I try to give a little background as to where I get information from or how I reach certain conclusions before I bombard you with facts and entertain you with the humor that goes along with my personality. I still find, I think education should be not so serious, especially if it's enjoyable, and I try to make it do both. So those of you who take notes and are bookworms and are researchers and so on and so forth, not all of this information comes from these books. Some come from pamphlets, some come from other sources, but in the main, again, these are books that will probably bring you the information you're going to hear until it gets to the very heavy psychic part. One is called The Redundant Male. The Redundant Male by Drs. Jeremy Cherfas and Dr. John Gribbin and Cherfas. Another book is The Physiological Enigma of Woman. The Physiological Enigma of Woman by Professor Hilton Hotima. Professor Hilton Hotima. Another is The Great Red Dragon. The Great Red Dragon, again by Professor Hilton Hotima. The Sky People. The Sky People. Brinsley Lapoere Trench. Brinsley Lapoere Trench. The Star People. The Star People. One was sky, the next is star. By Brad and Francis Steiger. Brad and Francis Steiger. Man the Unknown. Man the Unknown by Alexis Carroll. Alexis Carroll. Let me also say that at the beginning, many females could save themselves a lot of physical problems by continuing what they did when they were very young girls, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, standing on your head either once a day or twice a day for at least 3.5 to 5 minutes. I start that at the very beginning. I give you your $5 worth at this time. If you want to make extra donations later, great. You can leave and go home if you just understand the importance of what I just told every female in here. Stand on your head once a day. If you can't do it now, have somebody hold your feet up. Invert your position of your body for at least 3.5 minutes. If you get dizzy as soon as you start it for the first 30 days or 30 seconds, and then keep on trying, and if you don't do it but 5 seconds, if you could invert your body for 3.5 minutes a day, which gets away from this tremendous gravitational pull on this planet and all of the iron and poisons that are in the earth, and give you a chance to reverse those cell structures and let the blood, just like the River Nile, run backwards, you'd save yourselves a lot of problems. Now, that's the end of the lecture. It was good talking. Also, again, I have a large group. It's not really so large. We have about 18 active people and about 7 very active people in the Meta Center. And then we have close to 200 members. I wish that I see them usually once a year during the so-called holiday celebrations. One of the ways that we raise money is selling the booklet of prophecies. Most of you have bought it. If you haven't, please buy it from me before I leave. It's $3.50. The booklet of prophecies. It lists the 34 prophecies for the United States. It's cross-reference between Nostradamus, Edgar Casey, Mother Shipton, who was a black woman, lived in Louisiana. She doesn't get the publicity she should have. She was an excellent psychic and prophet. Paracelsus, and a couple other people, and then the Holy Bible. I do that because most of us are more familiar probably with that book than any others, although I do understand the sophistication of my audience here, so I'm simply not denigrating, I'm simply sharing. Wherever we found those things listing a thing that seemingly was the prophecy once or twice, we listed it. We came down with all the things we could have said to 34 prophecies, 4 of which are my psychic ability in effect, and I hope that they are good and standard as the rest of them are. I don't tell you which 4 because then you say, well, those 4, Brother Blair, I'm not going to think about. I'll just go by the old masters. Also, we have a special earthquake insert which shows the 20 most earthquake-prone cities and why, the last time they had one, and so on and so forth. And around New York, around Buffalo, is listed. Also understand the prophecies said for these islands here. And understand that from 96 on, this will probably happen. You'll start getting, in this year, 94, an idea of what's going to happen, because everything that can happen will happen one time at least in 94. That means we're in for one heck of 1 year. It was people understand what we're coming up against, trying for one more time to let those pompous, egotistical maniacs become at least human and show some signs of spirituality. The books have already said they will not. If they do not, then it starts. Right now, these are warning timblors. They're really not even trimmers, yet they're trimblors. We haven't seen what nature can do when nature finally loses her cool. Today, I heard your president speak and say what was going to happen tomorrow if Bosnia-Herzegovina and Serbs don't do right. Well, this has already been pre-planned. Already the undertakings are not for the purpose you see, and you'll find it out when you see those kind of troops in your streets in 1996 and 97 in the streets of the United States. They will not use the troops from here, they'll use foreign troops. The foreign troops will show you no mercy. Most of them can't even speak the English language. There are a lot of prophecies, and you're in the time for the fulfillment of those prophecies. I say, as the days seem to run by and quicken, you'll see time is speeding up. Some of you already have noticed that. It is not a joke. Time, as we understand it, is speeding up. You are going to be quickened. You wouldn't be sitting here today when you could be doing other things. You wouldn't have been here last night when you could be doing other things, unless there's a quickening spirit within you that needs food, the real manna from heaven, spiritual food. So, as always, and I'm not joking with you, I'm very, very happy to be here. I wouldn't do anything else if I could, and I'd be very sorry if the Creator did not grant me at least a subsistence and hopefully a good life in speaking to people and sharing the little information that I have. And by your presence here, you make my life worthwhile, and therefore I give as openly and as much as I can. Sometimes I get carried away. Stop me. Usually on the question and answer, it all gets spewed out. Today, I want to share with you what was advertised as the Woman Lecture. It's either been called, in general, the true story of woman or the womb man lecture. Already the brother kind of took my thunder and gave you a punchline, so I'm going to have to see if I can find some other punchlines now, because he was sharing with you again one of the secrets about the true creation of Earth, woman, and what a patriarchal male society has done to try and take her away from her proper vestures. Females in general have a lot of problems with other females. Housewives in general have a lot of problems and distrust for the working girl and the working woman. The women who work with the husbands of housewives are thought of by housewives to be the biggest threat on the planet. Not the earthquakes and tornadoes, but the woman that the man sees every day and has to work with her. We find again that most of the secretaries, co-workers, and now executives and sometimes bosses are females who are ruling their men, and the men have to sycophant in order to keep their jobs. So not only is there a problem in the immediate nuclear family, but there's problem on the job. Women scrutinize women very, very closely. The appraisal of a woman for another woman is such that I find men pale by comparison in their criticism or critiquing of either males or females. It takes a woman to tell you about a woman. But also there is a bonding amongst females that I don't find amongst males in general outside of the sports arena and fraternal groups. It is a mutual benefit and understanding what suffering is all about. Now, it's terrible to say that all females suffer, but if you listen to some of the conversations, as I've been privileged to do so, and have shared with you conversations as I would act as a panel organization or moderator for panels of women, every woman feels in general that she is put upon or has gone through pain that nobody except another woman could possibly begin to understand, and one of such pains, of course, is the miracle of childbirth. I've heard women say there is no pain a man can endure that rivals that of childbirth, and yet I see women getting pregnant all the time and looking forward to carrying children, so I say something's wrong, you're lying to me. There must be a pleasure that comes with that pain that is undescribable, because I wouldn't go through it twice. Somebody would get killed. So, not being a female, but admiring and loving the female, I say there are certain special things that you do and have that obviously you don't quite share honestly with the male, and so I've tried to pique your scenario by researching and studying you. Let me state also at the beginning that there are many ways now that women get on top of our society. White women, especially now, dominate our society. Black women try to dominate a society which has been usurped, and I won't spend time with that because most of you are more than familiar with the history, so-called black history, Afro-American, Kemetic history, interchanging with America. But I will say this. Whether it is sexual wiles or womanly ways, the woman usually gets her way in the long run with any male. It just depends on how far she's willing to go in mind or in body. But usually knowing herself, she can get her way. Why do I preface all of this first? Because it is now getting to be almost a crime to be a true female, to be a real woman. And those that strive to be feminine, whatever that means, and to be a real woman really catch it from others who feel that they don't want to be that type of female and a real woman. I say to you this, be what you have to be, and be it proudly, but don't be hypocritical. Do what you have to do, but do it with the understanding that your consciousness is as good as anybody else's consciousness, and if you at least do that, when you pay for it, good or bad, you will know why you are paying for it. I did research, and I start off very basic. And I looked into the encyclopedias and the dictionaries, and I got the following explanation for the following words, and I share them with you. Woman, an adult female human being. Any problems with that? Most of you agree? At least we start out in agreement. Womanhood, the time or condition of being a woman. Pretty fair in comprehension, understanding? You still with me, all right? Girl, a female child or a young unmarried woman. But then I also looked up and I found out in Teutonic times, I didn't ask for this, I just found it, the word girl meant young boy. Now that interested me. I then looked biblically, and it stated, created from Adam's rib to be a helpmeet to man. And I thought about that, a helpmeet, and I said, how do they spell that? M-E-E-T or M-E-A-T? But since man is the dominant species on earth, and since man was supposed to subject and subdue, then the meats have to go under. Women is and women are the weaker sex. We all know that. Everybody's aware of that. And I'm going to read you some reasons to prove exactly what I just stated. I mean, I saw some turnings there, grimaces. You all are aware that women are the weaker sex, aren't you? We didn't stay in agreement past 3 statements. Some of you actually believe that woman is not the weaker sex? It's going to be a long afternoon. Well, let me try to educate you as to why these are truths. Throughout the world, there are more widows than there are widowers. There are more women, 100, or octogenarians and over, than men. Well, you're looking at me. I'm telling you how I'm going to prove my statement. Just bear with me. The female body, on a worldwide consideration, retains the characteristics of youth much longer than does the male body. Are you getting the picture? Less or fewer women have hardening of the arteries than men, the incidence of ulcers in men, and again, most of the deterioration and the signs of age show less in the female body than they do in the male body. Told you I was going to prove a point. There's more heart failure and apoplexy in men than there is in women. Women can usually hold their breath without deterioration of cell structure deprived of oxygen, and much more less suffocated than men. And women can usually endure cold weather on a general basis better than men and can adjust to heat temperatures when their thermostat works correctly more so than men. Are you beginning to see the picture of the proof of what my opening statement was? How many of you are still with me? Confusion and puzzlement. Oh, good. Women in general at higher altitudes, like in the Andes Mountains and so, can usually carry heavier loads than men because the muscle fiber is toned better, and the amount of oxygen within the cell structures is greater than that of men. The female brain not only has a finer texture and more complex organization than that of the male, but relative to overall body weight, it is 1/4 pound heavier. There are fewer female baby miscarriages than there are male baby miscarriages. And during childhood, the female is mentally superior to male because the girl of 7, usually because of the rich thyroid hormones, has a brain capacity and a body capacity that dwarfs a boy in both mind and body. They're usually taller, more symmetric, and have better brain cohesion and function than does the boy. So now you understand that I have hopefully proven to you my opening statement. Is there anybody now that disagrees with anything that I said? I didn't think you women would. And I know the fellows have just said, what in the world has gone on with that nut up there? Bear with me. Okay? But by the age of 12, or when what is called puberty sets in, most of those things begin to change. So much so that by the time the men and women reach 21 years of age, the women, in suffering so much mental, physical, and nerve endurance, has a hard time competing or goes one-sided. What happens between the time of birth, puberty, and maturity of the age of 21 is where this lecture really begins. What happens is based on one word, in effect, men. It is based on menstruation. Menstruation. Many times it is pronounced menstruation. That is not correct. But one thing is, it starts with men. Menstruation. Menstruating women in general lose calcium, thyroxine, iodine, phosphorus, lecithin, vitamin E, vitamin B1, 6, 12, 2, 6, magnesium, manganese, iron, copper, zinc, and sometimes for some women this starts 2 weeks prior to the menses. You think about that. Calcium, for instance, stabilizes the nervous system. Phosphorus is found in all healthy, normal cells. Iodine causes the growth and maintenance of the thyroid gland, and this is why the thyroid gland in women tends to swell during menstruation. I give you another key so you don't run off and spend all your money at the doctor's. I repeat that. That's why the thyroid gland in women tends to swell during menstruation. Science has proven that the birth of congenital idiots increases when one travels inland where the soil and the food lacks iodine. Iodine is also an essential element for the maturation and maintenance of healthy female cells. What is very interesting is that not all women on this planet menstruate. Also, not all women on this planet have ever menstruated. But all women think that all women do. Let me also spend a little time with that concept. Most Hindu women do not, and definitely did not, menstruate. One of the last famous Hindu women to achieve prominence on a world stage was Indira Gandhi, who until she started doing certain things and making certain practices as she toured the world, readily admitted she had not suffered a menstrual period until she began to do these things. Had she would followed her religious undertakings, maybe it never would have started. Most ancient African or Kemetic women did not menstruate. Not Belkis, not Apatia, not any of the so-called queens of Africa seemingly did once they began to have knowledge of self. The Oracle of the Delphi, according to the Greeks, were a group of women who pontificated and led Greece through its heyday. It was not led by the warrior men. They did the fighting. The thinking was done by the oracles, and many of the oracles were females. They have said that the oracles did not menstruate. We hear a lot of talk about the Amazon women, the Teutonic women, the female Gauls, the West African Watetatars, the East African Bossamans, the Andambes of the Congo. Most of these oceanic women and most of these Kemetic women did not menstruate. These women were the strong women of our history. And in many cases, they could grow to be 7 and 8 feet tall. That's why amongst the Watusi and the Watusi women, when they told you of their diets and things that used to be different, they have some of the most tall, or the tallest women and persons, in fact, on earth itself. The Old Testament said, and the ancient Hebrews said, that menstruation was unclean, and that a woman should be confined until cleansed of her issue. But understand again, a lot of that book was tampered with by a patriarchal society, and if you're not aware of that, and I think most of you should be, then we have a lot of interaction that we could go through. With the advent of monogamy, and now I'm thinking about Africa, monogamy, by what we would call the Christian forefathers who wanted their church to really flourish, came the taught, learned sensation that menstruation was correct, menstruation was necessary, and was the woman's paying for her sins for having made Adam eat the apple and now must also bear her child in pain and affliction. And many of you bought that, didn't you? I state to you that menstruation is not a cleansing process. It is only the result of the deterioration of the egg, unfertilized, and that men have perpetuated a myth that women collectively have bought, and I can at least begin to forgive some African Kemetic women because they didn't have too much of a choice. In their old habitats, in their old lands, many of them, as I say, were taught better. I'm going to now talk to you as adults, if I already haven't, and I hope again you will accept these things with an adult mind, and then on the Q&A, talk to me, question me if you will. The whites is a street slang for a term called leukorrhea. It is an issue, a secretion from the vaginal area which women sometimes suffer from. If the womb becomes catarrhal, has mucus, has a cold, the whites is one of the results. The inflammation of the uterine lining produces, in many cases, menstruation, and many things can cause that, as we shall talk about. The fluids lost in leukorrhea, or colloquial on the street, the whites, are important vital substances. Lipoids, alkaline lactates, natural sodium, potassium, calcium, plus brain and nerve foods in the form of lecithin. In fact, the mucous corpuscles present in leukorrhea are presently hemoglobin capable. What do I mean by that? It means that they are capable of forming human blood-carrying, oxygenating corpuscles. So not only does a woman then suffer the menses, but if she also has leukorrhea, she is constantly losing the ability to build life-giving blood cells, which anyone knows without that the body does what? Deteriorates. Some women are on a constant menses. And then you wonder why some women are very irritable, very agitative, anemic. They get dizzy and have migraine headaches and jump at the sound of a firecracker 20 miles away, which they think they can hear. If anyone suffered that kind of loss from puberty till death, I wonder again why women are not half crazy. There are some men and other women that say they are. I didn't say it. I say, faced with that loss, we could have a problem. I state that if the menses were cessated, if it stopped, if the blood loss and even the alkaline liptrate loss was ceased and stopped, then not only would women be very strong, and they wouldn't be intuitive, they would be psychic, but they also could give birth to babies without a man being anywhere around. And there is the key to your problem and your problematic solution. You've bought into the coat's lie, the white coat's lie, the medical doctor's lie, which came about under a patriarchal system. If you start understanding the cadavers that were messed with in England and France at the turn of the 17th, 18th century, and experimentation still goes on. In fact, they, by law, are given under the caduceus the right to practice. And the practice is upon, in many cases, you as females. There was a theory called the Ovist theory, spelled O-V-I-S-T, pronounced R. It was proven, not postulated, I repeat, proven by Professor Jacques Loeb of Stanford University, that the embryo develops from the egg alone and does not require spermatozoon. Did you hear what I just stated? According to Professor Loeb, you can make a developing embryo to become mitigated and go in the first, second, and third trimesters of birth without the need of the male sperm, under certain circumstances. The prevailing medical theory is one of epigenesis, and it says again that you must